Hey, what is up? What is going on? Welcome back. Today we are talking about the a6000 once again. The other day I did a video on the a6000 where I talked about whether or not I thought it was a great camera going into 2021. So if you haven't seen that video, I definitely recommend going and checking that out. But I did have a couple people message me and they were curious as to whether or not I thought the a6000 was good for vlogging. And so I figured why not just go ahead and show you. So that is what we're doing today. We're gonna head into the city. We're gonna do some street photography with the a6000 as well. That's gonna be a separate video, but this video is gonna be all about this guy and whether or not I think it's still good enough for vlogging. So let's go ahead and do it. Okay, so can you use the a6000 as a vlogging camera? I think the obvious answer to that question is yes. And I think most people obviously already know that, yeah, for sure, you can definitely use it as a vlogging camera. That's not really the best question. The better question is the a6000 ideal for vlogging, or is it at least good enough? So as far as, is it ideal? I would say probably not. There's certainly plenty of other cameras that are out there that are better than the a6000 objectively in pretty much every single way at vlogging. So in that sense, no, it's not ideal. But if the a6000 is the camera that you can afford, or if it's the camera that you already have, then I would say that it is certainly good enough. And in that sense, it's definitely ideal. So don't think that just because you don't have the latest and greatest, you don't have the best equipment, that you can't go out and still create great content with the a6000. Sure, there's gonna be a few things that you're gonna have to compromise on, but the a6000 is still gonna be more than suitable for vlogging. Okay, so generally when people are looking at a camera to use it for vlogging, there's generally three main things in my opinion that they're really primarily concerned with. The first being autofocus. So how well is the camera going to be able to pick up your face, be able to track it, and not get too distracted on things in the background? It's not going to hunt too much from the foreground to you or whatever. And that's pretty important because the last thing you want to do is film a bunch of stuff while you're out, get back home, go to edit everything, and then realize you get a bunch of footage that's pretty much wasted because the camera was focused on something other than you the entire time. So that's one consideration that's pretty important when choosing a vlogging camera. And in my opinion, the a6000 does a pretty good job at it. It's not the best, but for considering its age and considering its price point, it's actually a pretty good camera at being able to track a face and not get too distracted on the background. Now, one thing that I do in order to help improve that is I use AF zone instead of AF wide for the autofocus area. That just helps the camera to focus more on the center of the frame rather than the outside edges, and it helps it to know to focus more of what's in the center. Okay, so the second main thing that most people are really looking for when they're looking at a camera for vlogging and determining whether or not it's good for it is, does it have a forward-facing flip-out screen of some sort? And the a6000 does not have that. You don't get any sort of flip forward screen. It does flip up and down, but it doesn't flip to face you while you're filming yourself. So because of that, you really can't check focus, you can't check your framing, and so that's a little bit of a downside. But for the most part, as long as the lens is facing directly at you, you're gonna be good. But if you wanna do weird things like point to things in the background of your frame, or if you want to have somebody else in frame with you and you wanna make sure you're both lined up, you're both in focus, that's gonna be a little bit more challenging on the a6000. There are workarounds to that, namely just film it, check it, make sure that it looks good, and if it doesn't, then redo it. Okay, so the third and final thing that most people are really looking for on a camera if they're gonna use it for vlogging is gonna be a microphone, or options for external microphones. Because let's face it, most internal microphones on most cameras, they pretty much sound like crap, and they're not really great at really focusing on you and your voice. They're gonna pick up all the ambient noise around you, all the background noise, and that can be very distracting, and in general, they just generally don't sound that great. So by having an option to throw on an external microphone, it's really gonna help improve your audio quite a bit. And again, just really focus more on your voice rather than all the other things around you. Now the a6000 is a little bit limited because it does not have a dedicated microphone in jack, but what it does have is Sony's multi-interface hot shoe. So what you can do is you can get a Sony microphone that supports the multi-interface hot shoe and plug that directly in to the camera, no wires, no cords, no nothing, and you do get some external audio options that way. Now granted, you're going to be a little bit more limited. You can't use all of like the Rode microphones that have like your standard microphone in jack. You're really going to have to go with the Sony options, so you are kind of limited on the a6000 and what you can use. If you do want to use something like a Rode mic or something like a more traditional microphone, you're going to have to go with something like an a6300 or an a6100 or pretty much any of the other Sony cameras. The a6000, unfortunately, you're a little bit limited. Oh, and right now, just for reference, I'm using the Sony G1 ZM shotgun microphone. So yeah, that's what I'm using right now. If you were curious as to whether or not I was using the internal or an external, it's an external. So one last thing before we take off. So this right here, super popular spot in Chicago for photography, but more on that in a minute. So is the a6000 the best camera for vlogging? Definitely not. There's definitely better options that are out there, but you know, it's definitely not the worst. Matter of fact, it's far from it. It's still a really, really solid camera that, you know, if you put it to use, you go out there and you just create something, it's going to be more than enough to create amazing content with. So definitely don't feel like it's going to hold you back in any sort of way. It's definitely got its limitations. There's a few things you'll have to work around, but generally speaking, it's still a really, really solid camera. So a few other quick points on the a6000 if you are going to use it for any sort of like filmmaking or vlogging. You're definitely going to want a relatively wide lens. It is an APS-C camera, so your field of view is going to be a little bit narrower than it would be for like a full frame camera at any given focal length. So definitely you're going to want to be getting a wide lens. Now the good thing is the kit lens that comes with the a6000 is 16 to 50. It's actually a pretty solid lens. It's really good. The image quality that comes out of it is really quite good. It's small, it's lightweight, it's compact, all great things if you're going to be holding this camera out in front of you all day long. And then on top of that, it does have optical steady shot built into the lens, which is a really good thing because the a6000 does not have any sort of in-body image stabilization on the sensor. So pretty much the only stabilization you're going to get is from the lens. And so yeah, the kit lens, the 16 to 50, does have that OSS. So that's going to be a really good plus on the kit lens as well. Really the only negative to it is the fact that it's a variable aperture lens. So at its widest, it's going to be f3.5, and then as you zoom in towards 50 millimeters, it's going to close down at 5.6. A little bit of a bummer, but I mean, that's pretty typical for a kit lens. You really can't expect more than that. Now, if you do want to upgrade, there's plenty of other options that are out there from Sigma, from Tamron, from Sony themselves. If you do want to upgrade to a slightly better lens, I'll link to a few of them down below. But again, generally speaking, the kit lens that comes with the a6000, it's a really great lens, and I don't think you're going to have too many issues with it. Like most things on this camera, a few workarounds, but you're still going to be able to create really great videos, really great content with it. So one other thing you're going to want to definitely pick up if you're going to be doing any sort of filmmaking or vlogging or whatever is going to be like a variable ND filter. If you're not familiar with what an ND filter is, I'm not going to go into super detail, but essentially because you're going to be locked into a specific shutter speed based off of whatever your frame rate is when you're filming, you need a different way to control exposure, and an ND filter is going to give you that extra ability to control exposure through means that is not the shutter speed. If you want to know more about it, there's tons of videos on YouTube. Definitely go search for those. They'll give you a better explanation, a more in-depth explanation of what an ND filter is and what it can do for you. But I definitely recommend picking one up. And the good thing is, if you do go with the kit lens, you can get really cheap variable ND filters on Amazon. I picked up one from a brand called Gobi or Gobe or something like that. It was like 20 or 30 bucks, but it's been really good quality for me so far. I haven't noticed any weird color cast or anything like that. So I'll link to that down below with everything else as well. And really the last thing, again, I'll mention, I know I talked about it briefly earlier, but again, you're going to want some sort of external microphone. The one that I've got on the camera right now is one from Sony. Again, I'll link to it down below. It's just the Sony GZ1M, like shotgun microphone, I think is what it's called. Anyways, again, it'll all be linked down to you in the comments below. But guys, that's really going to be it for this video. Hopefully you found it useful, got something out of it. If you did, definitely hit the thumbs up button. Subscribe if you haven't already. If you got any questions, comments, anything at all that I did not cover about this camera, definitely leave those down in the comment section below. And that's really going to be it for this video. Kind of a short one, hopefully. So again, until next time, take care, stay safe, and keep shooting. Peace.